Into today's topic, which is about yes, the interview process, but also how to make sure that you are finding the right person, what to look for and what questions to ask. And it's it's a balance of between like following your gut, but following the processes to make sure that you are making the right decisions. But yeah, so I'm sure everyone's sort of been in a situation where you've done an interview and you've come out going, "Wow, that was amazing," and then you go, "I'm ready to give this person a job," and you do end up giving them the job straight away, and then about 3 or 4 weeks later, you regret it because you haven't done anything else. You've just gone off that one conversation with them, thinking that, you've clicked really well, but then not realizing that they don't actually have the skills that you're looking for, or they've told you everything that you want to hear in that interview, but then when it comes to the actual job, they don't have the right attitude and the right motivation and all of that. So yeah, so with the interview process, it's always good just before that if you can have like a pre-screening call. And that's just where it's like a 5-minute conversation. You could do it over Zoom if you are looking to hire someone offshore and it's a bit harder to pick up the phone and call them. You can jump on a quick Zoom call, and it doesn't have to be a full-on interview, but it's basically just making sure that they do have the right skills to know that if you should actually be proceeding or not with a full-on interview, because the interview process, it can go for about an hour or so, depending on, how long it takes them to answer a certain question or whatever it is. But yeah, with the pre-screening questions, I've got a little list. The very first one, where are you currently based? That's just good because if you're hiring someone locally but they're based somewhere else, um, obviously you want to make sure that they're in the right location. But it's also good to know because we've had situations where we've gone to hire someone and they have been in the current location, but then their plan is to actually move to a different country in about 3 to 4 months. And that is a true story. We did actually, I'm pretty sure that was for Jamie actually. A couple of years ago, we hired someone for him in the Philippines, but yeah, 3 months later, they were like, "Oh, I'm moving to Canada," and they knew about this, but they just didn't disclose it. So asking that question is really important. The second one, do you have public practice experience? Obviously, if you're hiring someone in the accounting industry, you want to make sure that they've actually got that experience, not just the commercial side of things. Um, and this is the part where you can throw in a technical question in there and see if they can actually answer it. Because they might say, yes, I know how to do, I don't know, income tax returns or something, and then you ask them specifically what they would do in a situation. And if they don't know how to answer that, that's a red flag, obviously, because it means that they're lying. Good thing is you can still ask these questions again in the interview process just to see if things change as well. They might say one thing to you during the pre-screening stage, and then in the interview, they may change it. Um, and that's something that you want to look out for because the last thing you want is for there to be misalignment, basically. That's actually why with our Wize talent process, we get them to do a career history form first, because what we're doing is when they fill out that form and we do the interview stage, we're actually cross-referencing and just making sure that what they've said, what they've written down is the same thing that they tell us in the interview. So yeah, when you do these pre-screening questions, it's good to sort of just make sure that things are aligning. Um, some like I've spoken to clients and some clients feel a bit uncomfortable asking what the salary range is, like what they would want like basically asking the candidate, what's your salary expectation? We always say make sure you ask it because the last thing you want is to get into the interview, you've spent an hour, and then you've done this whole process, and then you find out that what they're expecting is completely different to what you can actually offer them.
Yes, and it's very frustrating when you have a really good interview and then you get to very unrealistic expectations and you have to then negotiate or withdraw. It is frustrating, which is in part why the career history form for me is so important of what salary you're looking for. Does that match to the position advertised? Does that match to my expected budget? And then that question. No one likes talking about money generally. It is difficult, but it is a good test of the openness of the team member as well. And you don't want to waste everyone's time, but it is good to ask it later in the interview as well. If you ask it too soon, you haven't built that relationship and rapport, so you're not necessarily going to get a genuine answer. But it is important to ensure that you cover that.
And also something to note is you don't want to change the salary in the hiring process. And I know people might be like, why would you do that? But I've had clients who've basically said, yes, let's offer, like we're going to do a salary range of this particular amount. And then once they've found someone and they're about to offer them the position, they've actually changed it and made it lower. Um, don't do that because the candidate will just we've had so many people say no to the job offer because they've changed the salary expectation. And that's not fair on anyone. Like this is why you do your capacity planner to make sure that you know how much you can offer. You do all that first, figure out what you can actually offer, and then stick to it. Because the last thing you want is to find someone amazing and then you say, oh, actually, I can't actually offer you this amount. And then you've wasted the candidate's time, you've wasted your own time. So yeah, definitely make sure that you stick to the salary that you've originally said. Make sure that you do your research on the actual salary, like the market, and we can help you with that as well because we have a salary guide. If anyone needs it or wants it, we can definitely send it across to you. That gets updated every year, but it's good to just make sure that you are staying competitive. You don't want to throw money at the problem. We've had clients who have basically just gone above and beyond and just gone really, really high with the salary because they're looking for someone, they're desperately looking for someone, but they've not considered the person's experience and all of that side of things. So yeah, just make sure that you are actually following a salary guide. Um, but Chrissy, I just wanted to sort of ask, well, it's sort of a two-part question. The first part is, what was your I guess interview process like before? And for everyone, this isn't a Wise Talent sales call. This is just because Christy's used us before. But yeah, what was your interview process like before and now?
Pretty loosey-goosey. It probably would have included when can you start and do you want the job? There wasn't really a lot of cover of experience because I didn't really know, a little bit of have you worked, for anyone in the industry before, but not a lot of structure to it. It was pretty basic and evident in the people that I hired that they were not aligned because I did not put thought into the process. In fact, the first couple of people were recommendations from colleagues or referrals from colleagues because I didn't have a hiring or interview process. It was pretty average, and now it's like a well-oiled machine. My production manager handles the interviews now for our production team, which has just been beautiful. I haven't needed to attend every interview because my calendar is a bit squishy at times. And so, it's also that thing of being responsive to candidates, ensuring that the right person is conducting the interview, but it doesn't always have to be the firm owner once you get into that position. Um, there was no structure, Dani.
Yeah. But that's a good point though with like the who's actually joining the interview. So what we recommend is if you can get the person who's actually going to be managing the person that you're hiring, if they can join the interview, that's really important because
Yeah.
they can sort of give their opinion as well. You don't want, three or four different people in the interview. Especially if it's over Zoom, you can just record it and send the recording to other people. um, but yeah, just making sure that at least that, if you're hiring a senior accountant, make sure the senior production manager's there.
Because on that point, because it's really important that they have a good working relationship. And I think sometimes when they don't meet who the direct report will be in the interview, it can already start to create a bit of a bypass. And you want to ensure that there is that respect of the person that they will be reporting to on a daily basis and that they feel comfortable with them. And yeah, I've seen a real shift in candidates from being interviewed by our production manager. It does also help. Our production manager is based in the Philippines, and we've been primarily growing our production team, so it's worked really well for Clarice to have that that relationship, and understand the nuances in the interview. So yeah, it's good. And
Yeah,
again, having a structured interview process has given her the confidence. And it's about micro training and empowering your people. If I just told Clarice to go and find me someone and ask them some questions to see if she liked them, she'd be a basket of nerves. She'd be terrified because it's not something she's had to do before. So having a clear guide for her to follow has been really beneficial.
yeah, that's right. And speaking about the guide, so some of the questions that we like to ask, or the structure of that is basically the very first thing, make sure you tell the candidate about your firm and about the role. Give them a bit of insight into what's going to go on there because the last thing you want is to jump into an interview. You say, thanks for joining me, and then you basically just go into everything. Like Kristy mentioned earlier, building that rapport. So
Mm.
if you give them a bit of insight, um, yeah, it starts to build that connection bit by bit.
The thing I like about it as well is when we discuss a bit about our type of clients we work with, the type of services we offer, the type of tech stack we have, it then helps the candidate feel a bit more comfortable and confident when they answer the questions about their current and previous role. They'll touch on the systems and softwares or clients that we've already mentioned. Instead of, they might just have a standard blanket answer and it doesn't cover all the softwares that you use or the type of clients, and you might think, oh, they're not going to work out. But you kind of sowing the seed for them, giving them the opportunity to see, oh, yep, I've worked with construction clients, or I've done end to end, or I've done CFO, or I haven't done that. So it just helps them formulate their answer for their current and previous experience. And you can dig a little bit deeper as well if they don't cover a response to what you've said in the introduction. And, again, I've had a team member choose us because of the hiring process. Dani helped me create a great video for our job ad. And then just the passion in which I can speak about my business and my team in the interview helped him decide to choose us over another business that was offering to pay him more. So, it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Um, and some questions to ask that are not necessarily important, but it's just good to know is asking about the software. What kind of software experience do they have? Um, Obviously, if you use Zero, but they've never used Zero before, that shouldn't deter you from hiring them because especially if they are very tech savvy and they're very like they're a fast learner, they can pick up on that. But just asking that sort of question sort of gives you a bit of an insight of to what software knowledge they do have. Um, but yeah, generally with the interview process, what we like to do is we start with their second most recent job. We go through a bunch of questions about what they do there. Um, their I guess what are their successes? What mistakes did they make? But something to look out for when you ask them, can you tell me about a mistake that you made in the role? if they give you a really generic answer, or if they say, I've never done a mistake and they're thinking big mistake, you can just say to them, look, just a small mistake that you made. But also ask them, how did you actually resolve that? Because that will sort of give you context. Are they just sort of making it up, or did they actually do this mistake and did they learn from their mistake as well? But ask them questions about their relationship with their manager as well. How do they like to be managed by their manager? Was their manager, did they have a good relationship? Was their communication skills, all that side of things as well? Um, and then one of the questions, obviously, everyone asks, what's your reason for leaving your job? But a question to ask after that is, have you actually spoken to your manager? Or if it's a past job, did you speak to your manager before you left? Um, if they say no, it's a red flag because you want to make sure that if they're ever going to leave your job, they're not just going to just hand in their resignation. You want to make sure that if there's an issue, they're actually going to talk to you about it first and see if there is a way that you can fix it somehow, rather than them just, basically saying, I'm done. Yeah, so that's always a good question to ask. But yeah, so if you start with their second most recent job, you move on to their most recent job, and then you start asking them questions about, I guess, how they would handle different situations. So, if they were to start a new job, but they're not sure what to do with a particular task, how would they go about it? Um, and then, you go on from there to basically, especially if it's like a work from home position, make sure you ask them, do you have a private office where, you're not going to be disturbed? Yeah, how do you handle working from home if you're going to be, if there's lots of distractions and things like that. Yeah.
I really like to ask. My business is completely remote, so whether it's onshore or offshore, it's the question around, do you have a separate place for working, or are you in a shared space? Are you sitting in the lounge room and you've got people at home all day? Because you want to ensure that the team member can have um, meetings, internal meetings. And if you have them doing any client facing, obviously that's really important that they can have a professional client facing meeting. I interviewed a candidate once, an onshore team member who was in the middle of house renovations and said she'd just be set up at the dining table all day and that was fine. And so, no, that's not fine. It comes down to, workplace health and safety. It's not great to be sitting at your dining table 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So it's those little things. Is the person being genuine and honest in honouring the role and their commitment to it? Are they going to look after themselves to be their best to work for you in a focused way? Or are they going to be distracted? We've had team members who have been in a shared room with their partner who also works from home. And then they have a lot of meetings during the day. So it's like, how are you going to meet with the team and do all of that? It's very challenging. So it's just getting that little bit of information. And even the one that makes me giggle the most with the answers you get is, have you considered starting a business? The yeses that you get to that are really surprising. I've had a couple of onshore people talk about, considering starting their own bookkeeping business before. It's like, oh, red flag, bye. But even team members who, their family has a restaurant and they work there, but it won't impact their work hours. I don't know how that doesn't. Or, they wanted to start up a retail. One person wanted to make jewelry and sell it online. It's like, I don't know how that's going to work with the role that you have. So it's not about catching people out, but again, this comes down to the relationship and rapport that you build with them in the interview, that they feel comfortable enough to be really honest. And that's where you look for the clues of maybe not a long-term fit.